All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Code and Connor podcast. My name is Connor Deeks, CEO of CodeStrap. We're going to be bringing you guys the latest and greatest around Palantir, the tech, the company, the community. Of course, like I always say, we'll also be discussing insights on other companies, things happening in the world of AI, of consulting, and any other hot topic that requires attention. The focus on today's episode is a smattering of things, and we're going to start off the docket with all the new Palantir partnerships that we've seen. We'll cover Bain, Accenture, SAP, Blue Forge, which is a shipbuilding company, and how we're essentially going to predict their future. So let's kick it off, Dorian, with Bain. What do we see with the Bain partnership?
Bain's interesting. I don't believe Bain is a account. They don't do accounting, right? So they don't have like the same restrictions that say
PwC. That's right. Yeah. No restrictions on clients.
Maybe you could explain that a little bit just for the audience so that they understand the difference between like a big four accounting firm, the restrictions they're under versus like a Bain.
Yeah, sure. So the big four is PwC, KPMG, Deloitte, and Ernst & Young. They are both a consulting or advisory company as well as a company that offers tax advice and audit or assurance services. When you have an audit practice of any kind, you start to have independence considerations and restrictions. So if I perform the audit of, let's say, Nike, the shoe manufacturer, I cannot provide them most consulting or management consulting services, because if I help you implement a system or provide you advice to the CEO and then I audit your financial records, you have a conflict of interest there. Yep. All that was born out of Enron and WorldCom in 2003, and then the birth of Sarbanes-Oxley. But that's big four. Bain, McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group. That's MBB. They're strictly management consulting. They can provide advisory services without any independence restrictions.
And that kind of directly relates to how many customers they can service. You know, Bain is unrestricted, meaning they can go after any customer that they want in that space. Whereas like a big four would have restrictions and they can't actually go out and like provide consulting and implement the software for Palantir. There's exceptions to all these things. It's complicated. There's processes inside these companies to determine. But ultimately, it just means for these other companies who are in the big four, I guess, is like they can't scale to the same number of customers as quickly. They've got to deal with some things and challenges and regulations around it. So Bain being unrestricted, I like quite a bit. What I think though is like the challenge is how many people can they train? Like, because I guarantee you, like, not very many people inside Bain are Foundry experts. We talked about this in the last episode.
Yeah.
There is a massive talent gap. So one of the things I notice about larger consultancies is they don't make long-term bets. They tend to be focused on the quarter-over-quarter revenue growth and hitting their targets. In case you don't know, every partner has their own book of business inside these consultancies, right? So like they have a specific revenue target they must hit. They're judged on that. Their percentage of, maybe you could talk a little bit, Connor, about how partners are paid in these consultancies, because it will help the audience maybe understand the financial incentives and how they work. But you know this better than I do. Like, it's very hard to get a group of partners to invest in something that isn't a massive money maker. If let's just say you have to spend a year training the workforce just to deliver.
Yeah.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about how hard that is to do in a large consulting company.
Well, yeah. So you're right. Most of what they optimize for is that year's earnings, their book of business, because that's how they're compensated. So the way that their equity or their incentive structure works is they're given a responsibility income, which is some base salary essentially. And then based on the earnings of the firm at the end of the year and the number of shares that they hold in the partnership, they then get what essentially is an annual bonus. That differs between the different firms. Some pay out on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, year.
Yep.
And MBB, McKinsey, Bain, and BCG, they might have a multi-year plan. I don't frankly know, but that would probably be better if you're thinking more of on a long-term basis.
Right.
That's how they're incentivized. So if it's not something that's providing them immediate value or that's proven in the past, then it's very hard to convince partners and then all of the staff that work for those partners and the organization that is around the partners to invest in anything, particularly anything innovative. So with Palantir operating in a different way than most other tech companies do, they struggle to adopt the technology. They struggle to adopt anything that's advanced. But at the same time, you have this macro trend of essentially, if you're not investing and learning AI, you're going to struggle in the future.
Oh yeah, 100%. And you won't be able, and specifically investing and learning AIP, ontology, Foundry's data integration and transformation capabilities. It's a broad platform. There's lots of different areas to master, and like I said, they're inside Bain. There probably isn't an existing talent pool that really knows this platform inside and out. And I sure as shit promise you, it's probably not like solution architects that would be the equivalent in AWS certified solution architect professional sitting inside Bain. And what that means is, like, at the end of the day, to scale at Bain, they probably are going to have to make an investment in training, and they'll probably need a COE, because one of the things that happens when you have a new technology that people won't know very well is you get a lot of differentiated outcomes across different delivery pods, where maybe one group, they have really much better seasoned people. The other one does not. They may build things completely differently. The customer may be happy with delivery pod A and just completely dissatisfied with delivery pod B. And so a center of excellence is meant to define what are the standards of excellence for delivering, say, a Palantir or Foundry solution. And then how do you automate the outcome of that, right? How do I ensure that that team actually builds something that's maintainable and usable, and the organization could run independently of engaging with Bain? So those two things, like investment in training and COE, I didn't read in their press release that they were investing in those things. I hope they look at it. The challenge you pointed out is like, okay, but how do you align the incentives with the partners, book of business revenue goals, those sorts of things? That I don't know. It's easier to solve the training and center of excellence problem.
Well, I wonder what Bain's going to do here, right? Because they're mostly strategic advisors, management consulting 101 type of thing. Number one, if you read about Bain, they're very, very focused on connections and advising CEOs of large institutions.
Which maps onto the ICP profile of Palantir customers for sure.
That's right. There's an alignment there. And if your goal is to strictly advise, and Bain, for what I know, doesn't implement any solutions, they generally partner with other institutions like Accenture. But just training and learning some of the nuts and bolts of Foundry and AIP, is that really going to allow you to be a strategic advisor on the platform as an option for a journey for a CEO? So are they just going to be a conduit for Palantir to deliver services? Or is there a goal to
maybe
get enough knowledge about the platform so that they can advise with confidence where Foundry and AIP fit?
Well, if it's the latter, they're going to run into the fact that there just aren't enough people inside Palantir to do that. I don't see Palantir committing resources for that. They're already, I forget what I saw a projection the other day from a research group that said Palantir's remaining performance obligations were over $2 billion. That's what's in the pipe right now, I don't know that they have the people to go then, help Bain, the customer at Bain deliver on these things necessarily. Now maybe for the right size deal value or something there is, but that could be challenging. So even if Bain's strategy is then to connect, well, it's not just Palantir, let's look at the boutiques and that ecosystem. That's highly fragmented, and we know the challenges. There are often a lot of roadblocks to bringing on new subcontractors and vendors in these companies. So just putting the relationships in place, the contracts in place, so that you could subcontract out to every available boutique might even be challenging for them.
Yeah. So, well, and if you don't have an implementation partner, if you're Bain and you're focused on strategic advice, let's say you do learn the platform, you can deliver that advice with confidence, or you can bring Palantir to bear in those conversations. And Palantir has all these obligations. So let's say they can't service the implementation, or they're not going to get as many people to do that at the speed that a client is, say, promised. You need an implementation partner, and Accenture ain't it. Big Four ain't it, or at least not at scale. So
we're a couple years out.
Where can you go other than the boutique network? And then you run into the problem you just mentioned, which is
you're going to be bottlenecked by the global people. But it is a good partnership in theory, because if it is a strategic advisory that Bain specializes in, you could see how that would be. They probably know they could probably do that better than an FDE at Palantir, in my opinion. And it also frees up the FDE to not have to do those things. And there's a lot of work around that as well, like in managing the relationships and aligning on what the customer would consider a definition of done for delivery of the strategy they're trying to execute. So they can really help fill in the white space and much faster in a scalable way and find the value levers that the business can pull on to, that in a foundry shaped way to deliver the value. I think we are circling around this idea that even if Bain's excellent and executes perfectly and they are able to align with the Palantir ICPs, they still might fundamentally be constrained by not having the delivery partner that you're talking about, the implementation partner that can scale to meet the demand they're having. And that might come into conflict if it's like, hey, wait a minute, like I'm partner A. If I can't deliver these implementations for the customer, I'm looking at, revenue target B, and that is not aligned with where I want my bonus to be at the end of the year. It's like, so it just points to like maybe the partner network is still going to be fundamentally constrained by the lack of size of the talent pool, which is getting solved. I mean, that is something that we're looking at. But Accenture did announce in their thing that they are training, I think, 1,000 people, investing in 1,000 people to be trained.
Interesting. I wonder where those.
Did we put a dollar value on that? I was like thinking about it the other day. I was like, how much would it cost Accenture to train 1,000 people in Foundry? Like, what would you think?
Well, if they're going to put it through Ontologize, which is probably the right move. I mean, number one, for the audience, if you don't know, Palantir offers self-paced training through learn.palantir.com. There's speed runs, so you can get end-to-end solutions built. You can get a flavor for how to build in platform from data integration all the way to building applications. Then there are more specific training modules or pathways that you can take that are more deep in data engineering or software engineering, application development, AI, agent building, those types of things. So there is that. And Taylor and his organization Ontologize offers more tailored training to an organization. I don't know if Accenture is engaged Ontologize.
And we do customized paths, right? Like based on the outcomes, the customers, we work with Ontologize to develop customized learning paths based on what the organization is trying to do. Yeah.
That's right. And set up operating models so that the people that are going to be trained are positioned in the right way to be more
in the right layer of the platform where they can add the most value, et cetera.
Yeah. Be force multipliers for, let's say, if you have a very few engineers, how are you going to enable a large swath of business analysts? There's a mechanism and an operating model to do that correctly in our minds. Right. But if you're spending a few $1,000s on training for 1,000 people, you're definitely spending millions of dollars to do it. So investing in training, and maybe there's some arbitrage there if it's offshore versus onshore.
That's right.
It's definitely a big investment for Accenture. And from what I've seen, I haven't seen them in the implementation.
So that's only for the initial week-long training, right? Like if you're thinking 3,000 per person.
Gun.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the starting gun. The actual, like to get them to where they can deliver, let's just say the target is, I want my people as good as the FDEs inside Palantir. Like that doesn't happen overnight, even in Palantir. Like they have a training program that I think lasts a year to get people spun up and trained. And that's inside the four walls of Palantir where they have access to everything, right? Like all the resources that Palantir has. I personally feel that the average roadmap for an associate, a senior associate, manager, director at Accenture is more like 2 years before they're even remotely close to a Palantir FDE.
So onshore, let's put a swag assessment here of $70,000, $60,000 for a first year associate out of university coming in. So $30,000 per person. Let's say 25% of that 1,000 people is onshore. So 30,000 times 250 times the or plus the Ontologized training.
Yeah.
It starts to add up dramatically.
Quickly get into a $10 investment easy. If you're being generous, right? Like we've scoped things down to 6 months and 75% offshore, 25% onshore. Whether it turns out that that's what they're doing, I don't know. Maybe it's 100% offshore or whatever, but like, it's still a substantial investment. And so like going back to the points we were making around, the Bain partnership is like, is there an appetite to make that kind of investment really? Or is it like surface level? We're going to announce we're training 1,000 people. We're going to give them a week of training and now they're a certified expert. Kind of like what happened with blockchain. It's like someone took a blockchain course for a week and now they were being billed out as a blockchain expert. Right, a lot of these same companies.
Yeah.
Is that what's going to happen?
I could almost guarantee you that's what's going to happen. So you're probably going to see a huge growth of people that are like internally certified by Accenture or whomever, who, have had 1 week of training, maybe have gone through Ontologize.
I'm betting it's all offshore too. Knowing Accenture and how they operate, it's probably all offshore.
Yeah, well, it depends on if it's the federal government space or offshore. I don't know these.
You know what? Was it the government space?
Yeah, I think it was their federal space where well, it's funny because Accenture technically already had a partnership with Palantir. At least it was listed on the partnership page.
Exactly.
That kind of failed years and years ago. We talked about this with John on the last episode about V1 of the partner network. So the latest announcement is on their federal services. So I don't know exactly if you can have offshore involved in that. I'm sure there's some mechanism there, but that is where the partnership was.
So it could be even more expensive if it's all onshore. It has to be onshore because of the restrictions in government.
Yeah. Palantir has massive growth in that space, right? That's probably where
the thing that has to happen, and you would think if Accenture really is making an investment in 1,000 people, it's a $10 million investment over 6 months to a year, probably 6 months. And it's probably going to be 1 week, but like, who knows? It could range from, it's a substantial investment, but the thing that the partners would have to show on the other side of that is the revenue, right? Yeah. So it's almost like they would need, they couldn't wait longer than 6 months. It's almost like immediately they need to open revenue streams. Maybe they already have those relationships in place. Maybe they're supplementing some of the talent gap with Palantir. The FedRAMP platform FedStart platform is very interesting because it could accelerate development of specific technology assets and use those in government. Maybe Palantir could bootstrap that too, though. That's the other thing I was thinking. I was like, what if they're just using Palantir's existing solutions and coming in as an integrator in the federal space?
Yeah.
Even, in the commercial space, maybe the problem with the commercial space, a lot of people don't realize is like when you're talking about supply chain or some of these other things where Palantir has existing modules, there are a lot of point solutions that are highly competitive and a lot of other offerings that businesses already use. And those alliances inside these large firms are like 100 times bigger than Palantir. So it's very difficult in the commercial space, but in the government space, that could be very interesting. So maybe they took a strategy as an integrator to bring that stuff in. I don't know.
Probably. I mean, you have Project Maven, which is massive. Could be advancements or getting that customized for different parts of the DoD.
They are offering some foundational ontologies in that space. It's on the marketplace now. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So maybe Accenture has a play there. I think there's a lot of competing priorities in these companies where, like you said, there's other alliances. And traditionally how tech alliances form with big consulting is that the tech company provides a lot of incentives to the big consulting company. Whether that's in
you don't say.
When
you don't say, really? Who would have thought?
When a tech consultant says they're taking a tech agnostic approach and you randomly end up buying Microsoft product, you should know why.
It's technology agnostic, but 100% of the time the customer chooses Microsoft. I don't think so. It's like,
or Blue Yonder or some other or Salesforce. And these alliances inside of each of the big consulting companies are very big. And there's this incentivization that drives partners to do stuff.
$1 billion revenue streams inside these companies attached.
Particularly with the ERPs, they're very, very big, and there's an incentive not to change behavior or rock the boat.
You'll get a phone call very quickly, right? Like we did.
Over and over again. And so you have like a bunch of competing interests. And Palantir doesn't really operate in the same manner. And so I'd just be interested to see how these like partnerships play out. I think Bain's is well positioned if they do it right and they understand the platform. And they have an implementation.
You put the right people in there, it could be. I think that's the reason we succeeded is just like, you actually have to believe in Palantir as a technology company, maybe be able to look past some of the things that make them a difficult partner, and see like they've had a very unique insight and secret that they've built into the product for a number of years. It's just fully differentiated in what it can do. So if you have people on the other side in these things that are true believers and not just, I'm making a quick play here to try and make 10 million next year in my bonus, if they actually believe in the mission too is, I think, also important because I think every day we get a comment around, I spoke to so-and-so about Palantir, but they don't like Alex Carr. They don't like Peter Thiel. or whatever. You get a lot of that too. So they're going to take a lot of slings and arrows, and I actually think you have to believe in the company and the mission to be successful. I would say like in both cases, the Accenture case and the Bain case, I still think it fundamentally comes down to how big of a revenue pipe can you open up given the amount of jobs you can execute, which is dependent on the talent pool you have. And then how do you deliver with quality? Because a lot of these companies don't think of quality as a first principle. It's like they're trying to deliver, maybe they're going to execute this strategy that's been created, but they're not thinking about the quality at which the execution is done or how maintainable it is once they walk away. And I do think that's something Palantir cares deeply about. Like, I don't think that they want to be blamed that their technology doesn't work or there's some defect in the company that was literally the result of some partner not knowing how to use the technology correctly. So I think that there has to be an eye on the quality here too, by these people. But I do want to talk about SAP too, because that was another one that came out almost out of nowhere, right? Like, I wasn't expecting that.
Well, I kind of expected it after Databricks made the same partnership, right?
Okay.
So Databricks announced their SAP partnership, I don't know, 3-4 months ago, 5 months ago, whenever it was. So you're blending this new age capability with what is the oldest or second oldest ERP?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And so what does that mean? What I've seen with SAP, right, is you took an on-prem behemoth of a software capability and essentially just lifted it into the cloud with S/4HANA.
It's digital transformation, buddy. That's what digital transformation is all about. We're going to lift this into the cloud, dude. We're transformed.
And we'll spend hundreds of millions of dollars on implementation partners and the software just to be in the cloud. And we can unpack as to how the fuck that is even possible to make those decisions again. But maybe we put that aside for now. And what does both the Databricks and Palantir partnership bring to both parties? We can put Databricks and Palantir as one, and then SAP as the other party. For SAP, I think what they see is advanced capability that's being delivered much faster. And by the way, SAP has a bunch of bolt-on products that you can basically procure from SAP to bring into the fold of whatever your instance is. And I think Databricks and Palantir are kind of like that. Obviously, they're separate companies, but they provide advanced capability that everybody is using. So it's kind of inevitability that they had to partner with them.
And it's also like, to your point around these like long-term digital transformations that are lift and shifts, from on-prem to cloud. That's been going on for years now. You need to be able to use that data and execute on things while that's taking place, Yeah. And so Palantir is like a really good platform if you want to be able to leverage your SAP data while you're doing this lift and shift and invest in building workflow applications and incorporate it, or insights and actions. It's a great platform to then bring that in along with all your other stuff. So it can be very good as a means to tell the business like, hey, while you wait, for this thing happening over here in our migration and transformation, let's build some of these use cases that you need today.
Yeah. Maybe that informs the implementation of S/4HANA or something. It also massively can speed up, because a lot of people that lift SAP ECC to 4HANA aren't just, it's kind of a joke that it really is a lot of the time just lift and shift. And there may be other systems that are being deprecated for another module in SAP. So if you can bring all that data into one place, which is one of Foundry's secret sauces, which is data integration. Then they have HyperAuto, which allows you to map all that to the ontology really quickly from SAP. That probably has a massive ROI from a speed to implementation of 4HANA.
For sure.
Now, SIs will hate that because there goes
they will.
Their time.
See our points around the challenges their partners are going to face inside Bain and Accenture, because SAP is one of those multi-billion-dollar, alliances that all these companies have.
Yeah. Is it a zero-sum game for those guys? Probably.
I don't know. Probably. I wouldn't say it's a zero-sum game because they're so big. Like, you're talking about billions of dollars these companies are making off SAP services. I don't think Palantir touches all of those, but I think people could be very protective about those alliances. So if they sniff out like, oh, you're doing this thing that I was planning to do 6 months after our 3-year migration plan is done, and it's going to impact 100 million in revenue, you will get a phone call about that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Does the Palantir Alliance in Deloitte have to then give away the revenue they're earning to the SAP Alliance? Be a fun conversation to be part of.
Ooh. Yeah. So like you guys, if you don't know all this stuff exists inside these companies, it absolutely does. It's not fun to deal with. And, that could be another challenge, but like, I do think from the customer's perspective, the speed to value is so critical that if the consultancy is going to salvage its reputation, eventually it has to cave to helping the customer. Like there's only so much bullshit you can spin before the customer starts to figure out like, hey, why exactly are you stopping me from doing this again? Like, how does this make sense?
Yeah. So there's right speed to value. You can integrate it faster. You can get more advanced features at the end. You can get advanced features while you're implementing the new stage of the ERP.
That's right.
So I mean, all those are positives. I think for both parties. I think both parties being SAP and Databricks / Palantir.
Yeah.
I think the only loser is maybe the SIs, who at the end of the day, it should all be about the customer. And
we'll see how influential they are too with SAP, because it's not that they'll just complain to Palantir, they'll go back to SAP and be like, hey, we made you $5 billion last year, or like whatever the number is. Can you use us as a preferred partner for these type of use cases?
Yeah. Well, that would recommend us as a preferred partner. That would require the SIs to invest in knowing what Palantir does or knowing how Databricks works. So,
but I'm saying they could go to SAP and say, hey, rather than recommending Palantir as an accelerator, will you recommend this part of my SAP practice that is using hyperscaler A, maybe it's Azure, as a preferred partner rather than recommending the Palantir accelerator? Even though that's directly competing against the Palantir practice inside their own company, you can see it happening where they're complaining back to SAP. And because they have such a loud voice, it could potentially spell problems for them. But I think for the customer is the winner there. Like the customer gets speed to value in Foundry. They can produce use cases that unblock the business. I think at the end of the day also makes SAP for HANA in the cloud more valuable. We'll talk a little bit about this later, how bringing that SAP data together with a bunch of other data actually allows you to unlock use cases you can't do today, especially the AI ones. They're super interesting. We'll talk more about that later in the show, like why that is. So I think this is actually a great partnership all around, other than it being a challenge for what you're pointing out, which is the SIs. So see how it plays out.
Cool. Last one would be, and I think this was just announced today, which is the partnership with a company called Blue Forge, which is focused on shipbuilding, either the manufacturing specifically or services around it. I'm not quite sure. I haven't dug into the company, but they just announced that alliance or that relationship today.
Yep. I think that's awesome. Like there's some really interesting stats around how China outcompetes us in shipbuilding, and it's both important from a defense point of view, but also a commercial point of view. On the defense side, being able to project military force anywhere in the world, especially on the seas, is extremely important. And we're seeing how that played out in the Middle East, right? And how much that can fuck with the global economy if you shut one shipping lane down. But you can also think about it in the context of Taiwan, China's ability to project force and put a blockade in place against Taiwan. That could really fuck things up for the US, and trigger a massive conflict. So like, our ability to build ships and project force in the world, and then also for the commercial aspects, I think is huge. I love where Shalom has been going with this sort of defense industrial concept too, and hopefully we see more of this as well. The only question I have about actual effect on capacity is sort of the same I have around home building, which is like, okay, it's like a little bit like Doge, right? Like the primary drivers of America's debt and deficit are like Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and entitlements. It has nothing to do with what Doge is looking at. Like around the margins, you'll get a few crumbs, but the actual problem takes action on the things that drive the debt and deficit. But like, is it the same with shipbuilding where it's like, I mean, at the end of the day, it might be the regulations and the labor unions and some of these other things, the political and institutional factors that constrain our capacity. Not the least of which might be the access to the raw materials and everything else, So like, are they supply constrained? Are they constrained by bureaucracy and regulation? And how much can technology actually fill the gap? Those are the questions I sort of have. But I'm interested to get your thoughts.
Well, I mean, I talked to some Palantirians about this. They work a lot in the construction space, and getting more and more into real estate. So, like, if you can affect the money associated with this,
very true,
with REITs, then you can certainly drive a lot, and that could impact the regulation as well through lobbyists and whatnot. But not stretching it that far. We talked about who is going to build the solutions to get. If we're not going to change the regulation, then how do we get through this mountain of paperwork to build a home, to construct a ship? And shipbuilding is going to be different. I'm going to use construction because I'm more familiar with it. But like, you have federal regulation, you have state regulation, you have localized regulation, you have bodies that are like the Water Bureau or the Land Management Bureau. So you have like 10 different layers. So if you want to build anything that has a foundation with sticks that hold up a roof, you're talking about needing an entire workforce to fill out that paperwork. So who's going to build a generalized solution, fingers crossed on Foundry and using AIP, that can get through those things? And maybe they start with a given state and then they move to the next one. But it is a massive problem, like you said, and that's probably the biggest constraint on all this. So
it's not filing the paperwork that's the biggest constraint. It's the paperwork that's the biggest constraint.
Filling out PDF. We just applied I
don't think that's the bottleneck. I think the bottleneck is what happens after you submit the paperwork, which is getting the approvals and actually getting to an outcome with the government as a partner, whether that's local or federal. And in a lot of cases, I don't think you can, like, let's just give you a parallel in California. I've heard horror story after horror story, people trying to build new communities, of it taking 20 years, and it's due to, the CEQA Act in California essentially allows independent, groups to bring lawsuits against development projects at any stage. You could have your permit. You could have done your environmental impact study. You can still be sued and your project still halted while that lawsuit takes place due to the way this law was written. It's written by Republicans, by the way. It's not a left or right thing. But like, the point being is that that is not going to be alleviated no matter how fast you can do the paperwork, because you're still bottlenecked by the court system.
Sure.
So what I'm wondering is, like, what are the bottlenecks in the context of both home building and shipbuilding that are fundamentally not going to be solved by technology?
Well, I don't know. We have a friend at a company called Hazel that's working with municipalities to try and unlock this.
Check them out. Yeah. Austin, former Palantir, looking in this space. August. Sorry, August. I do know your name. I promise, bro.
Yeah.
We worked with August for a while at the company we were just at.
That's right.
And so and I got to see. I was really psyched when he launched this company. It's looking into ways to make this application to the government contracts easier, etc.
And he's working with municipalities at different levels. Cities, big cities. I won't name the ones we know about, but like big cities that, hopefully you can start to solve. Okay, maybe my solution is more filling out the paperwork. His is dealing with the paperwork, make sure there's more of a competitive ecosystem, not burdened by regulation, or at least you can get through the regulation faster from the ingest of all that stuff. So maybe software plays a big role in unlocking that, or we can just cut through the bullshit and change some of this regulation so that.
Well, I just question what role it does play. Like, have we measured what role? I mean, in the case of Hazel, I understand the goal they're trying to unlock there is, like, you have a person that can execute on a government contract, whether that's waste management or something else. And the bottleneck truly is the application process. And the fact that, because the application process is hard, you get a limited pool of applicants. You don't actually get a broad pool of applicants. So that means you're getting less competitive bids.
Yeah.
I could see how what he's doing solves that problem. I don't see how making, filing paperwork faster or getting more efficient in the use of technology solves fundamental problems in home building. And I don't know shipbuilding, but I know a little bit about home building, because the fundamental bottlenecks there have nothing to do with actually building the home. It's all the shit before you build the home or during the project that halts the project. And I actually believe that like the people who build these things, like Lennar, for example, are very good at building them. Like, we know how to build them fast. We know how to build them cheap. Yeah, we can get incrementally better as we implement technology. Maybe, meaningfully better, 20% better or something like that. But we can get 80% better.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, like what is the incremental percentage of shipbuilding capacity we can add by leveraging technology? Is it under 10%? Is it above 10%? Like, where does this number sit?
Yeah.
But obviously I think they have a much more informed opinion around this than I do. I think that they see a roadmap there where there is value. I mean, obviously they won't be doing it if there isn't value. I just wonder about the narrative around capacity. Like, does that actually play out?
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll bring someone on from one of these companies.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
If you're watching or anyone at Palantir, can help us get some people on to talk about this. I think it'd be a really interesting conversation, both in the context of home building and ship construction. I think it'd be two very interesting things to look at.
Yeah. Cool.
Sweet.
Those are the partnerships that have been announced. Try and predict their future as best we can. Offer some advice.
I think it all comes back to supply constraint. Internal politics. Will they work out? And at the end of the day, we'll call it restrictions on the economy that deal with red tape.
Yeah. Cool. So, jump to the next topic, potential disruption to Palantir or anyone that's looking to build AI solutions, things that are happening in the ecosystem around AI, particularly want to touch on Google.
Yep.
Why don't you kick us off there, Dorian?
Yeah. So for the last couple of years, a lot of the people I know who are heavy in AI have been looking heavily at Google. And especially in the last year, their research division's been kicking ass. They're coming out with some of the best papers. I think Alpha Evolve is one of the smartest things I've seen recently, and sort of how AI can evolve and build better solutions and find maybe path to discovery. And then also it appears Google is really starting to flex its muscles around the fact that it can give things away where its competitors have to charge for it. Yeah. One of the neatest things I saw that I really like is their CLI for coding. What's cool about it, it's the Gemini CLI, you can check it out on GitHub, is they also included, like, beyond it being open source, like fully open source, which is important for a developer like me because I want to be able to implement X reason inside the Gemini CLI because I have particular ways I like to code out my solutions. X reason is our framework for agents, and it lets me sort of let the model build a solid architectural plan within the confines of my way I build software and then execute it in a way that I want it done. But the cool thing about it being open source, I can do that. But the other cool thing was, like, they're giving away a ton of free compute with it. It's like, I think you would have to have a subscription from Anthropic of about $200 a month to equal the amount of compute you could consume for free with the Gemini CLI. And this is starting to look like the execution playing out, which is like fully integrated vertical AI company like Google that runs its own chipsets, has its own cloud, builds its own models, does its own research, and has an infinite amount of cash sitting there. Yeah. And just fundamentally compete by just giving away technology and it's good technology. It's not shitty tech. I mean, we see this model with Microsoft a lot when they'll do bundling and they'll give away a shittier version of Slack to kill Slack, Right. But this isn't that. This is like a better version of a lot of the other things, and it's free and they have infinite money, So it's like, I'm curious to see what happens here because right now they seem to be primarily focused on research and developers. The challenge there is that Palantir is also going to have to attract those people, and it's not just Palantir. I mean, every company is working to attract those people. I mean, you're hearing the stories now. What is that? $100 million offers? Shit.
Yeah. My God.
Yeah. Eye-watering figures, right?
Yeah. 100 million.
I'm in the wrong field. Why couldn't I've been smart enough to go and be an AI researcher? I couldn't do it. But yeah, $100 million offer. So that it's an ultra competitive landscape among this foundational talent in particular in the AI space. But the level up from that is the software engineers who are actually going to have to build the systems around these models that deliver, actual solutions. And Google's going after both of those cohorts really, really hard. And I'm curious to see, does Google outcompete everyone here just with better technology and no cost? Or how does Palantir is a partner with them. So in theory, they can also offer these free compute hours and take advantage of what Google's selling. But there are some fundamental differences. Like, me as a developer, I can't integrate the Gemini CLI necessarily in code repositories that just live inside Foundry. There's some technical blockers there that I can't overcome. Or for example, if I'm working in Pipeline Builder, how does the independent software engineer who's building a Gemini CLI for Spark and DuckDB and whatever apply that technology inside Pipeline Builder? Right now,
Yeah.
there's no way to do that, even though the fundamental thing backing Pipeline Builder is a DSL and code at the end of the day. So like what that means is like, do developers migrate in one direction that isn't Palantir because of some of these blockers, or do they figure out how to apply these tools inside a Foundry? I'm not sure, but I do think this thing around cost is like we were saying a year ago, no one in the investor community was looking at like, how much does it cost to run an AI workload? How much does it cost to use GPT-4? Like until we get to the point where it's basically free, you're never going to scale it. And
Yeah.
it looks like Google is really zeroing in on this right now. And if you look at the flip side, platforms like Palantir and Databricks and Snowflake are some of the most expensive to run, and including the AI workloads that you run in them. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts around like what you're hearing from businesses around cost, bringing costs down. Are they thinking about AI in this context? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, every major company we talk to is focused on cost reduction in any meaningful way that they can attack it. Most companies don't have much AI production use cases at scale.
Yeah.
When they do see the numbers associated with a use case, and again, I touched on this a while ago, like if you can actually see the cost associated with a given workflow, it's both a good thing and a bad thing. One, you can control costs and see it. The bad thing is you suddenly start to lay waste to that use case and its return on investment, because suddenly you can see exactly what it's costing you. But yeah, so I think cost is going to be the biggest blocker for most of these things to go from prototype to production and then be used. Yeah. I'd also
cost can also be the lack of accuracy too. So like if you have I think John in our next episode you watch, episode 2, I think he brings this up where like in an operational context, no one's going to remember the 95 times you were right. They'll remember the 5 times you were wrong. And for those 5 times you were wrong, you'll probably get fired. You're talking about massive amounts of money when you're in an operations context or setting.
No. I do think there's something here where you have to bring the business engineers, or I guess that's what they're calling them now, citizen-led engineers too. And business analysts to the fold, because like the people who adopt things that they can immediately solve their own problems for is a big cohort of users, and I just don't see anyone that does that with Google's software. Maybe I should do some more exploration, but I work with a lot of Fortune 500 companies with a lot.
There's your developer tools. Like Google's really invested in developer tools for the most part. So,
yeah. Maybe it doesn't matter. Mission.
Well, I think at the end of the day, where it matters is like the developers need to be able to take what they're building and distribute it. So like, let's draw a parallel, like with Gemini CLI. I'm using it to build our coding assistants for Vicky and Benny. That's all open source on GitHub. And I can deploy that easily in Vercel, right? So like I can actually build a tool chain, and part of what these agents that I'm building can do is like merge a pull request, deploy the application, remediate issues, like if there's a failure in the build, how to fix it. Like these are kind of software engineering tasks that I want to automate. And I can easily do that within the context of Vercel. I can't easily do that within the context of Foundry, and sort of it's a much more closed ecosystem than say a Vercel as a deployment platform. I can build the same solution, right? So like Vicky runs exactly the same in a compute module in Foundry as it does in Vercel when I go and deploy it. Same code, running 2 different platforms. It just works, right?
Yeah.
We are using Foundry as our backend. We do that through REST API calls. So it works in either space. But what I can't do in Foundry is all this tooling around the platform side, and interacting with the platform. It's getting better, but it's not quite there. So developers might make choices about where they decide to deliver workloads that are driven more by like, how much can I automate and how much does it cost me to automate? Because that's the incentive right now. It's like the incentive as an engineer for me is like, I want to leverage AI to take over as much as my job function as I can, so that I can scale a company around fewer people,
Right.
And it's also work we don't want to do. Like, I don't want to sit there and monitor pull requests. I don't want to sit there and deal with build failures. I don't want to sit there and fucking deal with, some dependency conflict that's breaking my app. Like, that is shit that is not valuable. You don't care about that. Like, if I went to you and said, hey, Connor, guess what I did today? I resolved this build failure. You're like, what the fuck does that have to do with our business? So it's like, as an engineer, I want to be able to automate these things. It's much harder to automate these things in a closed ecosystem versus an open one. So I am curious as Google goes to execute and build these tools that make this automation easier, Palantir may have to accelerate some of its efforts to open up their platform in ways that maybe they haven't traditionally wanted to open it up in the past. Yeah, that's one potential thing.
Yeah, what do you think?
Or get better at developer experience, on the other side.
How quickly do developer cohorts, communities kind of shift here? Is it kind of like once it's getting more adopted,
it can shift quick.
Yeah,
it can shift quick. I think what you I'll give you an example. LangChain, LangChain wasn't around. I think it just came out 2 years ago or something. But it was in 6 months, seemed like everyone was using it, and then 6 months later, most of the people weren't using it anymore. They'd moved on to something else. Yes.
Yeah.
And then there was LangGraph
when that came out.
Especially in the context of a new technology, right? So AI being pretty new, developers are trying new things, and MCP, Model Context Protocol from Anthropic, that is skyrocketed in adoption, and it seems to be taking over. So developers can flip pretty quickly, even in the context of these CLI tools. You got the OpenAI version, the Anthropic version, Google's version. Google's just came out recently, and a lot of people are moving towards it. I think a lot of developers have tried all three, and it's not clear necessarily if they'll stay that way. There's other companies like NX too that are working on this that do mono repo management. Developers may move to what they're building once it gets fully released out there because it has differentiated capabilities and you can integrate some of these things. So yeah, they can move fast. They will break things along the way as they move, but they will move very quickly. So Palantir, I think, has to keep pace with that. And the last thing you want is feeling you don't want developers in Palantir feeling like they're the last people to be able to use new stuff.
Yeah.
If I stick within the confines of Foundry, I can't even try the latest versions of models, So I think they have to recognize it maybe has to evolve a little quicker so that developers can do things they can do in other platforms faster, or take these things they're building out here for these other delivery mechanisms and integrate them into Foundry. But I think with Google competing on cost, what's interesting is the combination of, let's say, developer cohort that goes along with Google. It's free, easy to use. Their models are excellent. They're not maybe the best at coding, but they're good enough and I can build around that. And because it's free, I'd rather do that. You got that cohort. Then you've got the cohort of enterprise customers that use GCP. And you see this all the time with BigQuery being widely adopted among the Palantir customer base. Their multimodal data plane integrates with, BigQuery, and you can take advantage of pushing the compute down there where it lives. But then as the death knell, they just come up with an ontology and everything north of it in some, realistic
over in Google.
Yeah, over in Google Cloud. And then the question is, well, why do I need Foundry again?
Yeah, I mean, I think people with the ontology think that it's quite simple. It's actually quite complex. There's a lot of things in it that if you're going to try and replicate it, get ready to spend a lot of money and time. I don't know how long that took Palantir to put together, but it's something like a decade.
Yep.
So it's not a inconsequential thing to try and replicate what is an ontology. You might start with, it's the data model and some functions that work with that data model. Guess what? There's a lot more that factors into why it's so valuable inside Foundry's four walls.
No one else has been able to do it. So
yeah. So maybe there's a couple years and billions of dollars to replicate what Palantir.
I have something I have a wrench to throw in your thesis though.
Okay.
Which is
roll away.
Well, I am seeing that even in my own work, I can be way more productive with AI coding this stuff out, especially if you invest in building your own tooling with these CLIs that code in your way of coding and you're grounding the model in your own code base and how software development is done. And then you build the solution architecture phase, the implementation and evaluation phase yourself. You can actually get to these differentiated outcomes. And I firmly believe that all of the world's information about how to build these systems exists publicly. If you just, let's just say I want to replicate Foundry's ontology. I actually know the components that go into it and how I would build an implementation. I could build one on top of MongoDB. I could build one on top of, probably MySQL at this point. But I know the database engines that already have most of the capabilities in them. And then how do I build the abstraction layers? That's a lot of that is an API and a UI engineering problem at that point.
Yep.
But I probably could do it if I dedicated a year, just myself to replicating that system with the help of AI as a single developer, and maybe I'm overestimating in a year, but no one would use it. It's obviously it wouldn't be part of a software package somewhere. But I think that what's changed fundamentally is it's not going to take 10 years and 2 billion to build the ontology. It's going to take 1 year and 1 million. So,
Yeah.
It's like that could be the thing that could be the thing that flips the conversation, is that software engineering, especially in solved problem domains, like not areas where I'm trying to find a better, and maybe in these two, better matrix multiplication, because that actually is something that Alpha Evolve did, is find like a better method of matrix multiplication. But like in these areas where I'm just saying, I want an abstraction layer that's a nice UI built on top, all of these database capabilities, along with the ability to manage transactions so that I have like a preferred way a distributed transaction works across the ontology or something, or how I manage rollbacks. These are things that actually have been built over and over, and I think there is a lot of pre-existing work. And if you can build a big enough knowledge base to solve your problem, and ground the model in that exact right information, you could start seeing an acceleration in how systems as complicated to build as the ontology and time intensive to build become much easier to build. Those are the kind of challenges Palantir is going to face as more and more companies enter this space, and especially Google. I would keep my eye on them. They are executing really well, in my opinion, after stumbling. Like they really stumbled heavily out of the gate. I think in the last year they've course corrected, and with agent mode in Google search, it's signaling that this company really is, I think, on the verge of like reinventing itself, that they're willing to cannibalize search in the way they are. I don't know if have you used agent mode?
A bit. You called attention
AI
to
mode?
Yeah, it's AI mode. I bet I'm still kind of stuck on Perplexity, but yeah, I've tried it out. I think it's
you'll notice there's no blue links in AI. It's like you could check the source references and click over if you want, but like it does look like it would cannibalize a lot of their search business at the end of the day.
Yeah, which is a big move.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, and what if they come out with an announcement? I mean, we're kind of transitioning into an investor pitch, but like, what if they come out with an announcement that they figured out how to monetize that with their advertising base? I mean, at that point, stock probably goes hyperbolic, ballistic. Because I used AI mode. I think it is much better for search than anything else, because Google search engine is better than anything else.
Yeah.
And that's how they made all this money, right? Why did the whole world use Google and not Bing,
Yeah. Well, Bing's terrible.
What was the number one search term on Bing? How do I use Google? So, hey, look, guys, I think at the end of the day, if you're talking about something people are actually going to use as a replacement for search, it's not going to be the worst search engine in the world. It's going to be the best search engine in the world.
Yeah.
And that's a good transition into, maybe we could talk quickly about the developer corner, dev corner, which touches on this, which is like what we found in building agent workloads is the number one thing that guarantees accuracy is getting the model access to the exact right information.
That's right.
So like, unless you can ground the model in the exact right information to answer a high value question, you won't get a high value answer. You're going to get a kind of a crappier answer. And that's true both in the context of search engines, like, Perplexity versus AI mode in Google. Google search engine is far superior. It's going to have access to way better information, and they're going to do a much better job of curating that and grounding the model, in my opinion. And that's ultimately going to lead to a better user experience and them winning in that space. The same thing happens in the developer side. So like, people will often ask me, like, why do you use Palantir, as your technology of choice to build AI and agents? And I'm like, because of this problem, right? Like, you need to ground the model in the exact right information. And in the context of enterprise, that means all of the organization's data, all of it, not just some of it, all of it, right?
Yeah.
Including the emails, the text messages, the meeting transcripts, where the business is actually being run on the day-to-day, that actually has the time-sensitive information in it. It's not sitting in some fucking relational database or some other thing. Like, and you need to bring all those systems of record in addition to that, right? So, and it can't just be SAP, and it can't just be, Salesforce or whatever. You actually have to bring all of that in, which is why each of these silos isn't going to win as a data platform or an agent platform, because it will only have a slice of the data. And Palantir today is the only enterprise platform in which you can bring all that data together and operationalize it securely. This does not exist across all these other platforms. And so I think from that perspective, that's why we prefer it for AI and building our AI workloads. And it has the integrations we need. Like, the OSDK allows us to, like I was saying earlier, we're deploying Vicky and Vercel. The way I make that work is through the OSDK, and it can be secure, right? It's like the OSDK is mapped into Foundry security. I know that every function invocation that this AI model is making on the behalf of a user is scoped to their access permissions in Foundry, which is which brings in all of the organization's data, not just some of it, which means I can get the exact right answer I need because I can get the exact right information the model needs, right? And so I think that's why it's winning. And I think that's why it's the preferred platform. But I'd be interested to get your take on like how enterprises are thinking about this, because I think a lot of them haven't realized this yet,
Well, I think it's massive, and we probably take it for granted when we're in Foundry how profound it is that you can connect any system of record and bring in emails and anything coming from the Office suite or the Google suite so easily. That just has a huge speed to value. So if we are trying to do a use case that's AI enabled that requires both the unstructured data from maybe an email as well as some type of system oriented data from SAP or something like that, that we can build an agentic capability that uses both those things, and we're not waiting 6 months to get the data into platform. That's huge. In fact, it completely changes the conversation away from like, hey, some, rinky-dink prototype that we're kind of building with synthetic data or notional data that the business can't really latch hold of the reality of what it's doing. And the fact that we're able to use real data when we're building these things is huge. Again, one of the reasons why Palantir's boot camps are so successful is that they can bring business operators and engineers into a room using the company's data,
the actual data,
to build something real, and then they can look and see and feel what the solution looks like.
Those are all great precursors, but I don't think they've realized that the key to making agents and AI successful is getting it grounded in the exact right information to answer the question.
Well, and the pushback from the business and let's say a mission critical workflow that costs the enterprise money. If we go back to what John said last episode with an operational workflow, if it's wrong, if it's wrong, even a minuscule percentage of the time, you can expect that solution to be abandoned by the users and go back to something they know, which is traditionally, unfortunately, Excel files. Now, what's funny about the way that workflows work today for things that utilize Excel or Alteryx or Power BI or whatever small tool, they're not right 100% of the time, but they're really comfortable with what they're doing, and they have the control of that accuracy. When you start to get agent or AI based workflows, or even injecting into small pieces of it, they're not comfortable with it. They don't know how it's working. It's hard for them to even understand the language that.
Well, especially if the model doesn't have access to the same data they do.
That's
they're gonna be like, "What the hell is this model talking about, dude?" Like, my Excel sheets over here in my filing cabinets say completely different, and it's actually right.
Yeah, that's right. So you just have this uncertainty associated with it, and then if you get back to it spitting out wrong answers, that solution ain't gonna work. And
I think you're touching on something too we should unpack a little bit, which is like the operations folks have a lot of proprietary information not only locked in their Excel files but in their head. That hasn't been documented. It's like, that's the push that I'm trying to make around getting the unstructured data in, is because we can start to tap into that. So let's just say today you're held hostage by senior operator A. We'll call him Bob. Bob, as of today, knows everything about how your business functions in this key area. And Bob manages a team of people, but Bob hasn't written down into a manual everything that Bob knows and how to run this line of business, right? And there's lots of rules and exceptions to know, right? But if I start recording all of Bob's meetings and all of Bob's text messages and all of Bob's emails, and I start putting that into a structured data set in the ontology, a year from now, Bob could fuck off, because I'm going to know everything about what Bob was doing, and I'm going to codify that into training data for models, and I'm going to start replacing Bob, because I don't like that Bob is a bottleneck to automation. I don't want to be dependent on humans for these functions. And guess what? We will be more accurate when systems replace humans in these areas where decisions need to be made. I'm a firm believer, if you can codify the rules that the humans are trying to check the boxes on, it doesn't mean you always get a better value judgment. I think in some cases, maybe not, but in most cases, you're going to get a better decision. And it's because humans are so much more fallible, and they forget things on so much more. They forget to do process A that, in some case, because it was disrupted by some incoming phone call, or maybe they were just hungry. It's like, so I do think that at the end of the day, if you can start to bring in this unstructured data, you start to figure out how your business actually works. A lot of the knowledge that's not only in the spreadsheets, but inside the brains get codified into an ontology that's now in a machine processable form. And you start to actually be able to transform and run your business. I think both of these things point to like, you need a platform in which you can bring in all the customers' data. And that's how, as developers, we're driving our agentic workloads to higher levels of accuracy and doing meaningful work. Is like, we're literally just depending on bringing every piece of data for the company into this unified ontology.
Well, I think like the human interaction with the AI proposals too, so human in the loop feedback,
Yep.
Is so important. It's interesting though, when you're working with business, they're like, wait, you mean to tell me this thing isn't 100% perfect upon first iteration? You're like, well, no, but as you interact with it and gate the AI's recommendations and the actions you're allowed to perform, we get really valuable data in addition to all the things collected through unstructured data that you talked about. That we can then make something that's way more valuable than certainly V1 eventually. But just going on the journey is a hard sell, which is interesting because some of these bogeys, the actual return on investment that's possible if you go on that journey are massive for large companies. 80, 90% cost reduction for a given human-led workflow, which is it might have a lot of edge cases too, but if you can get the core out.
There's always going to be the long tail of edge cases. I'm not advocating that we ever get to that. I think what's challenging today is like, you have both this problem of the Excel files that live out there that don't get brought in, and you have this problem of the knowledge that never gets captured because, I mean, it's technically there and you can mine it effectively, but it's in all of the unstructured data. And so that's a fundamental limit to what you can actually automate. It's just like, and what happens is in a lot of cases in these institutions, the CEO, the CFO, the CTO, they get bottlenecked by their directors who have all of this stuff in their head. And they are fundamentally being held hostage in their efforts to automate by people who don't want you to automate, and they're not doing it intentionally. I think that they just will often push back in ways to be like, you can never automate what I do, like, well, maybe we can, if we start capturing all of the things, maybe we could actually automate it in a reliable way. Maybe you still need to gatekeep it, and continually realign the system with new information. But we probably could automate, especially a lot of the stuff you don't want to be doing anyway.
Yeah, if you can offshore it, you can automate it. It's kind of
I think so. Yeah, I think if because those are high turnover jobs that generally come with a training manual.
Yeah.
In most cases, AI is capable of automating stuff. But what's interesting is just this idea, though, that this is why we use Foundry for our agentic workloads. Our Foundry Developer Foundation's open source on GitHub. We open source all of our agents, but all of the training data and the data used in the grounding process and the generation of the program that the machine executes, that's all held in Foundry. And it's like the perfect place to do it all. So I think that's really interesting. I do want to pivot really quickly to talk about DevCon 3. That just happened. I wasn't at it, unfortunately, but hopefully we'll be at the next one. I was getting a recap, read an interesting recap from Anurag over at Owens and Minor, who we work with. He published it on LinkedIn. It looks like Palantir is leaning heavily into improved AI assistance for their products, right? So like being able to generate end-to-end pipelines, for example.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a huge accelerator. And then AI forward deployed engineers built into the product, kind of do the forward deployed engineering workflows. I think both of these areas are super important and will, to our point, help solve some of the talent gap issues, right? Because like, if I, as an operator, can come in and be guided by these in-platform assistants and how to build a pipeline and pipeline builder faster and more efficiently, or I can have an FDE doing solution architecture, correctly, solution architecture and group definitions and management around the admin side. You don't need as much training to be productive. You might need training in those tools and expert help when you hit a bottleneck. But if you can actually like get that platform assistance, it's a massive accelerator, I think, in terms of solving the talent gap problem.
Yeah. I'd be interested to see how it plays out. I think the AI assistants, I think they call it AIP Assist, is like just a broad branding for all of the AI automation or assistance that you get in any of the microservices. How good that gets, how quickly it gets good, because when it first came out a couple of years ago, you could kind of use it for documentation.
It's been getting better. It's been getting much better.
A lot better. First, we'll take Pipeline Builder as an example. At first, you could like call one thing if you structured the language you wrote to it.
Now it can do multiple transforms.
Yeah, the whole pipeline and start to recommend things to you. So that's pretty powerful. I mean, number one, I recommend if you're using some type of low code, no code ETL point solution that you should seriously consider getting a developer license and exploring Pipeline Builder, because it kicks the shit out of some of the competition.
Go to build.palantir.com, free stacks, sign up, try it out. I think you're totally right. Like Pipeline Builder, I think for a visual building tool is the best there is. There's just not even anything close to it. And you can do both small and big data in it, which is also something that's very differentiated. Like a lot of these other tools struggle when you start talking about huge data sets. You know?
Yeah, but you start to get to AI guided usage of Foundry, and then obviously the automation of it. But let's take the step here with people using the platform. That's a remarkable advancement, because then you're talking about never getting stuck, having the answer when you get to a certain microservice, learning how to build something quickly, and then obviously automating away.
That was a thesis I had a long time ago. It was like these people who have abstraction tools might benefit more from AI because the problem set is simpler. You're talking about interpolating parameters into a JSON blob. That's I don't know if they use JSON in Pipeline Builder, but you're interpolating the parameters into a kind of well-formatted thing that's a domain-specific programming language. That's a simpler problem than having to write SQL from scratch.
Yeah.
And you can then move faster to use AI. And on top of that, it makes whatever abstraction tool you've built 10 times more valuable if a human doesn't have to operate it. And so like Palantir, I think, is going to accelerate much quicker in this space than, say, RPA systems or people who are looking to build web browsers that can be driven by AI, because they have a much simpler problem set they have to solve for to automate their solutions.
Yeah.
And it's just we have to see how good they are. Because like to your point earlier, like I struggled with some of the assistants in Pipeline Builder, for example, because they just weren't that accurate. You know, it's like it would sit there and take forever. It would get it wrong. You'd have to do it 3 times, you know? So like, but if they're getting to the point where it's actually good and it's like one shot end to end, like that's, oh my God, everything's going to change.
Crazy.
You know?
Yeah. And then you go across microservices, then you're then you're cooking with gasoline. Like maybe you spin up an analysis. You ask the question of the Pipeline Builder and you can do the analysis. And you can build ontology object types and link types.
Forward deployed engineer, right? So you're getting the AI forward deployed engineer.
That's right.
That can actually do these things for you. Now you're cooking with gas, because now it's like, maybe I only need one Foundry expert and they're acting like 20.
Yeah.
You know? That was our thesis when we were like thinking about building this company. Is like, we're going to automate a lot of this shit so that we don't need massive amounts of people, and our customers don't need massive amounts of people. They're just going to use the automation and tools to make one person like 20. And having Palantir as a partner, and that's amazing. So like, I'm super excited about these investments. I hope they do more of them, you know, because like, yes, they have to make investments in training. Yes, they have to make investments in partnerships, but by God, do they need to invest in automation? And it solves all these other problems I was bringing up earlier about like, oh, well, the partners have challenges on the talent gap. The customers have challenges on the talent gap. Their competitors will crush them in the spaces where developers can't automate. But if you can create a fundamentally better thing that isn't like me, software engineer, trying to automate code creation, you're actually automating a workforce on top of your platform. Oh, I'm going to adopt that. I'm going to learn everything there is to know about that, and I'm going to offer it to my customers. You know, I'm going to skip all the other stuff, and I'm just going to go straight to that.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome what they're doing there.
Cool.
Lastly, I think the other thing they announced, which is important for us, is ontologies as code. And so what's interesting about that's been coming for a while. They announced it at DevCon 1. I think they reiterated it at DevCon 2, and now I think they have a release for DevCon 3. And I believe that's the OSDK team that's driving that. It's like Eric Anderson and Elliot. I think that team is driving a lot of that. And what is important for us is like, we build foundational ontologies of which we pre-train agents to work on, and being able to actually deliver the ontology as a set of code instead of like in Marketplace today, for example, you're packaging up the objects and the interface definitions, and you're relying on Marketplace to rehydrate that on the other side. Ontology as code has lots of benefits because it'll be an easier hydration process to like spin up the objects and define your interface definitions. Rather than pointing and clicking in the interface set up in Foundry, I can now do this in code. I have a descriptive language that describes the object and its types. I can separate the interface from the implementation, and I can hydrate that quickly. The other is what Netflix recently did. Netflix realized across GraphQL and some of these other databases that were using like RDF to hydrate from, they needed their own language like ontology as code, so that they can consistently align on data models across the organization, even if they're completely different systems, right?
Hmm.
So like the systems that were running Graph Database A and running GraphQL and running System of Record, C, they all had the same types of objects they were dealing with, but because they had no common interface definition, like ontology modeling language they could use, they were all different and they all sucked and they wanted to consolidate, but still give these people the ability to use their own systems and data models. Ontology as code could also open up that, because there's no reason if you have a hydration tool that will hydrate your ontology into Foundry that you couldn't do that inside of Neo4j or MySQL. I've even built these myself. Like I used RDF parsers to hydrate SQLite databases with my ontology schemas, using RDF as the way I modeled it. So I absolutely see a future in which Palantir could do the same thing. So like, and what's the goal there? The goal there is we all share the same definitions of data. And that isn't valuable in the context, I think, of just a data model. Where it is valuable is pre-trained workforces that know how to work with the data model.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about like companies like ours trying to build agents ahead of time that companies can actually use, that's a highly specialized skill set. It also requires very differentiated capabilities in the agentic layer that a few people know how to build correctly. If we have a way in which to align on the data definitions, those things can work anywhere. You could be running platform A, platform C, whatever. As long as we're aligned on the data model, these models can actually work. So ontology as code is something I've been, I think, most excited about out of anything else. Like, yes, it's finally here.
Well, it gets out of ClickOps too, right?
Yeah, which is central to the way we build, right? Like we basically take the approach of, if you can't automate it, don't do it.
Right.
It's like let's just automate everything and get to a point where in Foundry you're really focused on, I hope we get to a point where you're really focused on working with their AI assistants to build massive business value really quickly. And then hopefully working with the idea that if you align on foundational data concepts and the nouns and verbs that are encoded in the ontology as a specification, you can build agents really quickly, and you can adopt pre-trained and built agents really quickly.
Yeah.
Now your workforce is starting to look different, maybe some of your hiring pipeline are companies like ours building agentic workforces.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be so weird in a couple of years where you are considering like in HR, how many agents do we hire if that's even appropriate use?
Yeah. Would that be bizarre?
Yeah. And then who's the AI managers? I saw some post about like, that's going to be a new profession. You're like, is it, or is it just going to be more AI managing the AI? TBD on that.
You could get really meta pretty quick. And it definitely could be. I think humans are always going to be around the edges of these systems just because they will collapse, I think, eventually, if left to just AI. You see this in model collapse all the time, where eventually they all just devolve into saying hello, please, thank you, whatever. And so, like, it's important to have continual human realignment and injection of new information and facts, I think. So humans, I think, will always be at the edges, but I do think that you will need far less of them. And in the context of management specifically, like, there's both a lot of automation that can be built without AI that is algorithmic in nature, and then some automation that's built with AI. And then, there's this AI manager that specializes in building new training data sets, evaluating new versions of the models, using evals to understand how the performance is going, and being the final decision maker about like which A/B test do you collapse to the version, based on that. I do see that could definitely be a profession. And I don't think you have to be a software engineer to do it. I think you're actually just using tools. I think you have to be very knowledgeable though, like about how either a particular system works. Maybe you're a doctor or whatever, or you have to be very knowledgeable about like how a business functions. I do question how we get those people and continually train them.
Yeah,
like, that's interesting. Like with our lawyers, when we ask them, like, "Hey, can your associates use AI?" and they're like, "No, we don't allow associates to use AI." Like we want them to learn, and they can't learn if they're using AI. So it is interesting. Like if I think about it from the software engineering perspective, there is an associate like role. It's a junior engineer. Maybe we need less junior engineers, but we're more selective about the junior engineers we hire. And I think that you could see that play out where like, unless you're top of your class, you don't get picked. It's like all of a sudden the available number of associate hires just goes to the floor. And it's like, you have to be in the top 1% or you're not getting a job, which would suck, by the way. Like, I don't necessarily want to see that future, but I can see like how the way we're going, it could end up like that, where it's like, no, you're an associate engineer. You're not allowed to use AI. Me, the senior engineer, I can build AI systems that maybe do some work for you in the background. You get to leverage those. Like it'll do your pull request review. It'll, manage dependency conflicts and updates and can do the low level programming you don't want to do. But you as the junior would have to type all your lines of code, and it's like, because I want you to learn, right?
Yeah, it's just basically academic versus actually. Well, I mean, I think a lot of junior developers or junior anybody in a profession are not really adding much value. But maybe there's this paradigm where you like literally know that you're going to be doing stuff that's less advanced, but
that's right.
Gives you the skill set to deliver value once.
It looks more like an apprentice model.
It's an apprentice model, exactly.
Yeah. And in the context of business manager that's managing AI now, you can imagine they need an apprentice because you literally would have to train them, I think, through all of the knowledge. It's going to take years for you to absorb everything that they know. And even then, it's going to take you much longer to become a replacement. But I think that might be right. It's like this apprenticeship model where you're pairing up the master with the apprentice. And there's just less of those positions available because you just don't need as many people at the end of the day. If all this plays out the way we think it will, but in some places you will need more people. Like I still think with Palantir, there's such a long ramp here. Maybe those people funnel into some other area. It does make me worried about the future though for college graduates. I think you bringing up research recently that's showing like available positions for undergrads and postgrads. It's just going to the floor.
Yeah, and this isn't just one publication. I wish I had this up. I would have pulled it up, but it's across many different domains, and it's going way like spooky down in the sense that like you're not even getting like low paying jobs. The jobs are drying up, and that's a problem for a lot of undergrads, particularly who expected to get a job out of university when they got a degree. And some of these things are trending up to like 10% of students not getting a job offer or any job, which is terrifying. If you just spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on education, you now can't monetize.
That's right.
I've actually reached out that the effort with the American Tech Fellowship should be moving towards working with universities as well to get people into the Foundry ecosystem so they do have a viable job opportunity.
It's a massive job track, especially if people are struggling trying to find opportunities right now.
Yeah, so that should come quickly. I even reached out to a couple of universities. We're working with one already to kind of get them knowledgeable on like what it means to be in this ecosystem, what it means.
Doing hackathons, like we've been looking at a partner to execute some hackathons, getting people interested, offering cash prizes, et cetera.
That's right. Yeah, I mean something to get these students to recognize and that there's disruption here that affects them, but then also pair it with an opportunity that's
a recruiting pipeline. Yeah, step into this recruiting, learn the platform, step into the recruiting pipeline, get a job.
Yeah. And it's a fun ecosystem to be in. You can monetize, which is important.
And I don't want to attribute the available opportunities dropping to the floor to AI. I don't think we're there yet, but it is a very good way to see the future of the challenges we'll face as less and less college educated people can get a job. The value prop too is already skewed. It's completely fucked up, which is like how much college debt do you rack up in order to get this job? Because like if you're 60 grand in debt and you're taking a job that's going to max out at 100 grand a year, maybe that's not the best use of your time, So we're already in this like kind of messed up system where the incentives are misaligned and you're not getting the value that was promised. In 5 years, if that turns into, and by the way, the available jobs has decreased by 50% for a first year graduate, like, wow, are we in for a world of hurt? It's, and a lot of people have been talking about this, especially in the context of how it drives political and social change. I don't necessarily buy those things. I think that the economy eventually, like, people find other things to do. And there are shifting value systems. It could be that like people find way more value in things they used to not. At one point, tulips were the hot commodity, and everyone was buying tulips. It's like people's value systems shift. It could be that they move over to more handcrafted items by humans, art. It could be that other forms of production now require labor in a different form. So we don't know what the second and third order consequences of mass adoption of AI are. I do think it's interesting to think about what the right model for these apprenticeship programs might be, how you could build new recruiting pipelines, earlier talent development too, might be an area where it's like, if you're going to go into effectively an apprenticeship program, like, why do I need to go to college for that in a lot of cases? It's like, why not just recruit out of high school?
Or an abbreviated experience.
Yeah.
It's not 4 years taking a bunch of courses that don't matter to you.
And I think 2 years of college is just general education, right? So it's like not even applicable necessarily. Yeah.
Other than at like the Ivy Leagues where it's a bit more flexible, definitely state institutions are general education for the first 2 years. Pick your major.
At least cut it in half, right? Like
cut it in half.
4 to 2. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Some of these courses.
But this is good, right? This gives us a mechanism by which we can exert pressure on broken systems and shifting things over to maybe something that does work, especially if we're being forward thinking about like, what are the skills you're going to need to have? Where are the enterprises already going? Working with the enterprises and the technology providers as partners to build new recruiting pipelines. And I think that could be really productive. So yeah, I mean, I do think at the end of the day, if you get into this space and you are a software engineer, or a citizen engineer, look at Palantir heavily, start looking at the tech fellowship and getting well-versed in the technology and platform, because I think at the end of the day, it opens up this wide range of opportunities for you.
That's right.
But I think we're going to wrap it, man. I think that's all we got today, right?
Yes, it is. Covered the new partnerships, talked about potential disruption, specifically Google, DevCon, Dev Corner, and kind of trailed into some plays around the tech fellowship and education. So cool. Future episodes coming every week. Like we've mentioned before, we have guests that'll be on the incoming episodes, other partners in the Palantir ecosystem, other partners that are ex-Meta, ex-Google, ex-Palantir that are shaping the future of technology, and customers that are using all this technology at scale. So pretty cool. Thanks for attending, or thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.